all hear me? Yes? So before I start talking about what I do, there is one very important question which will determine whether you understand what I do or not. And that question is, how many of you are dying for a cup of coffee or tea right now? So, okay, so there's a few hands. So I'm going to try very hard to give you that caffeine kick from my talk. So you might be thinking that CHAYN, crowdsourcing, need, it must be something about teaching women to code. And I swear it's nothing to do with that. So I started an organization called CHAYN, which is a volunteer network that has mostly survivors who have experienced domestic abuse or some other form of gender-based violence. And they are creating resources that they would read, resources that they need. And that's what I'm going to tell you more about. I actually grew up in Lahore in Pakistan, which is a beautiful city, and then went to Glasgow in Scotland for university. And it's there where I did the single most common thing that everyone does when it comes to technology and good. I over-engineered. I thought, well, I really want to do something empowering for women. What can I do? And all the ideas that I came up with just didn't work because I was thinking like a technical engineer, and that's not what was needed. So that's really where CHAYN came about. I was helping two very close friends of mine who were in abusive marriages, and we were looking for information, and we just couldn't find information. When we searched online, things like, how do I get a divorce? How do I get child custody? What are the laws in my country? It was shocking that even in the UK, where I was studying at the time, you just couldn't get it. Like, the information there was really disjointed in different places. The websites were not user-friendly at all. So they were all from the perspective of the organization. So I wanted to change that. And that's what CHAYN does. So we've reached about 720,000 page views. And CHAYN started with less than 500 euros. That was the first site that we created, was with less than 500 euros. And over the past 5 years, we've reached 202,000 people. We've done 17 projects, 400 volunteers from 15 or something countries. And 70% of these people, mostly women, in fact, we have 2 men. So everyone else has come to face with violence of some kind. And I'm going to show you some examples of the kind of work that we've done, so you can see how the very simplest of technology can be so empowering for people who are looking for that information. So we built a guide, which is my favorite project, called How Do You Build Your Own Domestic Violence Case Without a Lawyer? And what this does is it goes step by step and tells you what are the kind of evidences of abuse that you can collect. Because I'm sure because of the Me Too movement, you've read all the articles telling women that just because they say something happened, didn't happen, and where's the proof? So really, this guide is about breaking that down, and it's available in multiple languages, very soon in French as well. And after reading this guide, a survivor in the UK actually said, I wish I had read this 10 years ago. It has better advice than I've ever been given by solicitors or police. So you can imagine someone having spent like years, well, 10 years in this case, looking for this. And it was created by survivors from different countries and then checked by lawyers. So it's flipping the model on its head. So we don't get experts writing the resources. We get survivors writing the resources. And then experts get to weigh in. The next example is actually of a cat. And the cat is really important because we wanted to make it easy for women to understand if they're being stalked or harassed. But we found that our 70-page guide, no wonder, 70-page guide was, no one was interacting with it. So as a joke, because I love cats and I have 2 cats, one of the volunteers from CHAYN designed a cat based on my cat. And as a joke, we just put it on our Facebook page, and we got, within 3 weeks, we got so many messages. And we just thought that actually, just because you're dealing with something that's very serious doesn't mean you have to be serious in communicating it. So we devised this method of getting, expressing like different security security tips with very bad cat puns and cat pictures and GIFs. So there's one. You can actually go to this website and see the guide in French as well. And here's something that someone said, and they said that this is the first time anyone's ever been able to shed a light on what the usual authorities seem clueless about. Because the thing is, shelters, police, hospitals, they're not security experts, and they don't know. So what they usually tell women is, go offline. But that creates isolation, because where do you talk to your family? You talk to them on Facebook, on WhatsApp, you check in on Instagram. All of these places that allow you to connect with people, if you go off them, it actually makes your situation worse. So there are ways of being safe online. Here's another example of how we view something as simple as GIFs, whatever crowd you're in, showing, again, communicating a really heavy paragraph about how you might feel if you're feeling bad. It's from a guide called Manipulation is Abuse. And I'm going to share something really cool and new with you, which is that this is one quote we did from a research, and this quote from a survivor actually inspired us to build something that was mentioned in the last panel, which is a chatbot. And guess what? It does not pretend to be human because it's a cat. So you all know it's not human. In fact, we've taught the kitty French as well. And the point of this chatbot is that, let's say you're from, let's take the example of my home country in Pakistan. Let's say you're from Pakistan, but you're in France or in the UK or in US, wherever, and you want to find out information that's not just about your own country, like where you're from, but where you live. So right now, you'd have to go through multiple websites to find that information. So we wanted to cut the search time by 60%. That's what this kitty does. And we're really looking for feedback. So if you play around with the French version of the chatbot, which is on the same site, we would really appreciate it. And then the next thing is, we found that some people, again, it's kind of obvious. Some women, especially who were feeling very overwhelmed with their situations, just couldn't go through 100-page documents or even 50-page documents. So we decided to put them into mini courses. And our first trial of these mini courses, here's the feedback that we got from a survivor on that. It's called Soul Medicine. It has not launched yet, but it will also be available in French. And it's going to take all of CHAYN's guidance and put that into small messages via Facebook Messenger and email. Again, none of this is groundbreaking tech. And that's all I talk about, is how the stuff that CHAYN does is not groundbreaking in the way it uses tech, but the fact that it's making it easier for women to access things that are already out there. And I wanted to spend the last few minutes talking about what I've learned from doing this work. I myself am a volunteer. I have a full-time job, and so does everyone else in CHAYN, and it's quite difficult. But the most important thing that we found is that it's so empowering to get people who are experiencing, what we would call the users, on the table, not just for a focus group, not just to run something past them, but to give them the power to take up the pen and write it themselves, and collaborate with people from around the world. The changes we've seen in volunteers, from going from never having used email to running the entire organization, like the entirety of CHAYN with me. That's the kind of impact it has. And my last lessons for you are, please, if someone ever tells you you can disrupt social oppression, tell them you can't. You just can't. There is no amount of technology that can disrupt patriarchy, oppression, gender-based violence. It just cannot happen. So don't even try. Don't over-engineer. There are no easy solutions. These things are very complex, and what they need is intersectional perspectives, which is so important in not just the tech that we use, but in the resources we design. And lastly, I wanted to throw out 4 asks to you. So if you're looking at this thinking, I want to do something to help, then I wanted to give you 4 ways of helping. Well, number 1 is, remember my thing about inclusive design. You cannot disrupt oppression. Number 2, if you want to volunteer, please do join. We're always looking for volunteers. And number 3 is, if someone ever confides in you, or you suspect that someone's going through a hard time, please give them the space to tell you, but also build up that trust before you do that. Don't leave it to them to come up to you, and believe them when they tell you. Even if you have doubts about it, at that first instant, believe them. And lastly, is help us tell our story. We're looking for people who can help us in imagining what better inclusive technology can look like. And thank you.